Hello, everyone. Welcome to the BU show. If it's your first time joining us, we are raising our coffee mugs to you. I am Queen of the Day, Jen, my co-host Sonia, and today's guest is simply amazing. Before I have Sonia take it away, I suggest you have your writing utensil ready to go because the energy this person brings is just amazing. I have learned so much from him, from classes that I've taken and gone to. So get ready to have your minds blown today. Sonia?
Thanks, Jen. Oh, we are excited today. We want to introduce you to a guest of ours who we feel just is very complimentary to our coffee chat style, because here at the BU show, you know that we are unapologetically unique, and we're always looking for ways to grow and develop. And we have a special guest today who is a business and marketing strategist, a coach, an author, a podcast host, and really, we just like to refer to him as the Amazing Jedi. So please welcome, for all the way from New Zealand, by the way, Vince Warnock.
Hey guys, how you doing? And by the way, for everyone watching, full disclosure, it didn't normally say Jedi Master down there, but when I'm talking to Sonia and Jen, it was like, okay, we have to do this.
Absolutely. We know, we know that you are full on a fan. So we just had to
just
bring
a little bit, yeah.
Just a little.
Just a smidge.
Yeah. Yes, Yoda. So we wanted to bring that into just even the energy that we have here and ask you to just give us a brief introduction of who you are, where you've come from, other than halfway around the world to us. Go right ahead.
Yeah, well, basically a long time ago in a galaxy far, far away. No, yeah, look, I'm Vince Warnock. As you mentioned, I'm an author and a podcast host, but I've kind of been in and out of both entrepreneurship and corporate life for most of my career. So I've created and sold a number of businesses, recently sold an 8-figure business and then moved into Cigna Insurance as the chief marketing officer. So I spent about 5 years at Cigna, amazing job, incredible work that we're doing, great place to work, by the way, awesome team, but felt completely unfulfilled and genuinely unhappy near the end there as well. And I couldn't put my finger on why that was until I realized that I need to be at the forefront of where I'm impacting people. I need to actually see that impact. I need to interact with people. And when you're at that C-suite executive level, you kind of treat people as though they're numbers and dollar signs. I mean, I fully understand it. It's a Fortune 100 company. There is a whole pile of things that we have to do, but yeah, it just didn't sit with me at all. So I made the easiest hard decision I've ever made in my career, and I just said, that's it, I'm throwing that all away. I'm going to work full-time on being an author. I'm going to write my next book, which is all about imposter syndrome and dealing with that. And that was going to be the goal. And so I left there in January of 2020. The CEO thought I was completely mental, did actually offer to get me counseling and some kind of psychologist, because she's going, you know how much we pay you, don't you? No, yes, I know. And you're throwing that all away. Yes, I'm throwing it all away. Are you okay? I'm like, I'm fine. I'm not having a breakdown. This is actually what I want to do in my life. So I left there with the full intention of just writing a book. That then worked out very differently after about a week when I realized how bored I was. So that one book turned into 2 books, now into 3 that I'm writing, plus I've written a couple of children's books as well. And then I wanted to launch my podcast. I got a background in radio. I love the whole format. I just love being on camera, being on audio, being on anything where I'm interacting with people. And then kind of accidentally found myself being a marketing coach. And by that, I mean, most of the companies that I was interviewing for my books, most of the companies I was dealing with, all had a very common thing impact them, which of course was COVID. So not long after I left Cigna, all these companies were like, hey man, we would love to keep helping you. We want to invest our time into helping you write this book. But the reality is we have no income coming in, no revenue at all the same overheads. We don't even know if we're going to exist in 2 months' time. And if you're anything like me, I have such a soft spot for entrepreneurs. I've been, like I said, been an entrepreneur since I was about 11. I think it's an amazing life, an amazing calling. So I was like, I can't do this. I can't stand by and let these people suffer. So I said, let me come alongside you and help. And was very fortunate to not have a single casualty. We turned around every single business I was dealing with during a lockdown and got them all profitable. 3 of them, we doubled their income, and one of them, my little darlings, they tripled their income, mainly because they didn't realize actually what they were sitting on. They thought they had this little niche boutique shop, essentially. And then all of a sudden, when we put it online, all of Australia were like, we desperately need what you've got, help. Like, so it was just incredible. So that made me realize I had this strange feeling on the inside. I'm going, what is this weird thing I'm feeling? It's, fulfillment. Oh, happiness. Oh my goodness, why haven't I done this before? So that's the new phase of my career now, Sonia and Jen. It was just basically going, this is the thing I think I'm called to do, is to help people to build their business, to get profitable, and to have a whole pile of fun along the way as well.
Okay, I have to interject real quick. When you said TV and radio, I can totally see that in you. And that's why honestly, I left my career in early childhood education, and now I'm doing this. And I have my degree in communications because I was going to go into radio broadcasting, and I'm finally being able to do it. And it fills my cup so much. So,
oh my goodness. Yeah.
Yes.
Radio was my dream job, Jen. Like, seriously, when I was 7, I think I built my first crystal radio set, and I just used to listen to the radio. And I would hear these DJs and go, wait a minute, there's a job out there where you're paid to play music, to interact and joke around with each other, and to interact with the audience. I'm like, and you become semi-famous as a result of it. I'm like, hello, dream job. And then the opportunity came up. We had one of our top radio stations here looking for a new announcer. I put myself forward, and I was a shoo-in, got the role. Absolutely loved every aspect of the job except for one. Like, it really was my dream job. I just thoroughly enjoyed it, except for the pay, because the pay is terrible. Honestly, it's one of the worst paid jobs ever.
Yeah.
I was like, I've taken my show from being, I think, 3rd on the time slot to being number 1. They then moved me to a more profitable time slot. They were grooming me to be on the night show and filled on the morning show. So, yeah, we did it all. And yet the pay was like, I get more doing freelance web design than I get actually working full-time in radio. It's crazy.
It's insane now. The pay is not worth it. Totally agree. I had my opportunity, and I'm like, no, I'll stay put. I'll have the dream, and now I'm doing it with YouTube, so it works for me.
And that's the whole spirit of entrepreneurship, right? I mean, even Jen and I have talked over a few shows about how the impact of the internet has come along, and how we can do so much more and reach so many more people. I mean, when we 6 months ago started this plan to create this platform, we never expected that we would be talking to someone like yourself across the world. Like, I mean, the continent, it just doesn't, it's strange, but it's so empowering. And as you said, you made reference to the fact that if, the element of happiness and purpose and fulfillment. And I think that coming out of I call it a friend referred it to as the COVID chrysalis. Some of us are some people are like really thriving and they've become the beautiful butterflies. And some people still aren't sure where they fit in and what they're doing. And that's why, when we had posted the title of Curiosity Builds Intelligence, I'm like, I think we all need a bit of that business and growth wise. And so I'd love to hear your thoughts on it, Vince.
Oh my goodness. Okay. So first of all, when I was writing my first book, it was something I realized when I was approaching writing the book. I thought, right, okay, I've created a framework that I use for experimentation. So very exciting book. It's all around experimentation and digital marketing. But anyway, created the framework, and I thought, right, this is all well and good. But the thing I realized is I've taken that framework through every organization, every startup, every company that I've built. And one of the biggest challenges I had was never the framework. It was around basically getting people to thrive in this, like getting them to accept it, getting them to run with it. And there were a few certain things that I always found as a barrier. And one of them was curiosity. Like, seriously, most people would just look at data, want it to prove that they were right, look at the results, want it to prove they were right, and then go, okay, I'm satisfied. Or if it didn't prove you were right, you were dissatisfied. And I'm going, there is so much gold in what you've just done. Like, in all of that data, there is so much richness and learnings and all this kind of thing. So I realized I had to teach people how to be curious. And it took me back to when I was a kid, because I realized every parent here will know straight away, the number one thing your kids do when they're little is why. They just ask so many damn questions. And that's how we should be as entrepreneurs, like, legitimately. The problem we've got is we get that beaten out of us, and not beaten out in the sense of stop asking questions, but we suddenly get to a point where we feel like, for somewhat strange reason, if we're still asking questions, then people will doubt us. So if we go in as entrepreneurs and go, I don't know why that works that way, let's have a look at that, and we're asking questions about it, we think that people will judge us and go, you should know that by now. So I really wanted to, and this is what I used to do in corporate, is whenever I was creating a team, I would make sure that there was this kind of atmosphere of curiosity. What I do is create safe space for all of them where they could ask questions without any judgment. In fact, the first thing I do with any new employee is sit them down and go, by the way, you don't know everything. In some cases, there are even basic stuffs that you won't know. I can guarantee that, because there's basic stuff that I don't know, and I've been doing this for years, and that's okay. You're not expected to know everything, especially when we're talking marketing. The remit for marketing is so huge. Like, there's so many different facets to it, so many different areas. So it's safe to ask questions. And if you're sitting in an environment, like you're sitting in a meeting and someone brings up an acronym or some terminology you've never heard before, just nod and smile. And then afterwards go, hey guys, what does that mean? And we're not going to judge you at all. So I wanted to create that kind of safe space for them. And the more curiosity you cultivated in people, I started to see this interesting thing where their view towards experimentation, for example, their view towards trying something different completely changed. It shifted, because suddenly they weren't trying to, work within their own cognitive bias and go, okay, I'm trying to prove that I'm right. Instead, they would look for, what can I learn within this experience? So instead of going, I'm either succeeding or failing, you were either succeeding or learning. And that was a different way to approach it as well. It gave you so much more freedom to try new things. So, and then the more, honestly, I could talk on curiosity for hours. Sorry, guys, I'm warning you now. But the more I looked into this, the more I realized. So there's a huge piece of research, which I found fascinating. And what they did was they researched a whole pile of preschool children. And what they would do, they would observe all of these children. They did thousands of kids, and then they would actually track their career over a number of years, or their learning. I guess kids don't have a career, you know what I mean. So they would track these kids over the next few years to see how they do. And one of the things they found is there was a correlative link between curiosity, so the kids that were curious, and their IQ. Now, they couldn't find a causative link, so they couldn't say definitively that if you're more curious, then you have higher intelligence, or if you're more intelligent, you tend to be more curious. They couldn't actually define that link at all, but they found that there was this correlative link here. Now, that was really interesting. So then they found that the more curious children did better and did better and did better. So what I realized from this is you can't generally control your IQ, technically. Now, IQ is a flawed methodology anyway for measuring intelligence, but essentially it is your problem-solving ability, right? Which is important to us as entrepreneurs. So you can't really change that. You have your own problem-solving kind of level, I guess. You can get better at it, and by the way, you can learn IQ tests if you really want to. If you really want to kind of hack these things and seem like you're more intelligent than you are, you can learn how these questions are asked, and then you can do better in them. Not recommending that. But one of the things I realized, if you can't control your IQ, you can control your curiosity. And there are things that you can do to build curiosity into you, to get back to that childlike nature of being able to ask many, many different questions. And if there's a correlative link between curiosity and intelligence, then I'm just saying, if you're increasing your curiosity, theoretically, you're increasing your intelligence as well. So that's what I try and teach people. And there are certain ways that you can kind of bring that to life, certain ways that you can teach yourself to be curious. Oh my goodness. See, I warned you. I knew this was going to happen. As soon as you talk about curiosity, I'm going to go off on all these different tangents. Now you got me overexcited. So here's one of the things you can do. Like, one of the things you need to do is train yourself to ask many, many questions, right? And you're going to have to get over this whole thing of, like, we all have to as entrepreneurs. You've got to get over this whole mental attitude, this limitation, this self-doubt that we have, that if we're asking questions or if we're trying to learn something new, then people will judge us and think we should know that. And a good example of this is Leonardo da Vinci. If for any Leonardo da Vinci fans, I'm a huge fan of his, not so much for his artwork, beautiful artwork, but because this guy was a thinker. He invented so many different things. Like, by the way, he invented the first ever robot. He literally had sketches of how to make an automated knight, like, old medieval knight, which essentially is a robot. And I'm like, dude, first ever robot, Leonardo da Vinci. I mean, that in itself is amazing. He invented parachutes, helicopters, all these different kind of things that he would sketch out and draw, and some of them he never got to make. But he was just this creative thinker, and I thought, this is incredible. Now, in amongst all of Leonardo da Vinci's stuff, they had all these sketches of all these different inventions. They had all these different things that he was working on. And one of the things they found was a to-do list, which I'm fascinated by. And there was this to-do list in there which had all of the different things that he was planning on doing in the next week or so. There wasn't really a time frame on it. But if you go through all of the different things, like, it was something around 70-something% of those things that he had on his to-do list was inquiring of other people about something. So in the days they would call, I don't know how to describe it. I'm a Game of Thrones fan. So he talks about, contacting Maestro Giuseppe or something, and I'm like, whoa, this is so Game of Thrones. But I don't actually know what a maestro is. I think it's just like a teacher or something like that. But he would be in the list. It'd be talk to Maestro Giuseppe around the street structure of the area that he lived. Talk to somebody else about chemical reactions of this and that. So a lot of his stuff, this is one of the most creative thinkers of our time, or of that time, a lot of the things he had on his to-do list was asking questions of other people. We need to get to that level of comfort where we can go, you know what? I don't care if people are going to judge me. I don't care if I'm the dumbest person in the room. I'm going to ask questions on this. And I had this firsthand at one of my old organizations. I was at a corporate organization I worked with, and we were a not-for-profit. We had a huge amount of success, and we were using government funding here to promote education, basically students coming to New Zealand. So we had a huge amount of success, and the government saw this and they went, hey, you guys are doing really, really well, but we've got all these government departments that are in the same area as you, and they're not doing so well. Let's smash you all together and create what's called a Crown agency, so essentially a government department. I never wanted to work in government, and suddenly at the end of that I realized I've accidentally now worked in government. It was like, oh. But anyway, as part of this, we had a team come together to go, let's do all of the IT. We have to bring the IT together from all of these different things. We didn't have an IT guy. We had me. I knew how to turn a computer on and off. Apparently, that made me an IT guy. So I'm sitting in a room full of these super intelligent people, all talking about all the systems we needed to put in place. And one of them was this, I can't remember the acronym, it was like a GU73 Mark II system or something. And it was this software, essentially. And they said, oh, we need to set that up, and that's going to cost X, Y, Z. And I was like, oh, question, what is that? And around the room, the whole table rolled their eyes. And they were like, ugh, oh, you don't know, you're one of those. And I was like, well, sorry, guys, I'm not in your world. I don't know this. I haven't grown up through government and things. I don't know these systems. Can you explain to me what it is? And all of them hesitated. They were like, oh, well, if you don't know. And I said, well, I don't know. I really would like to know. And I kept pressing the point. And then I started to realize something. Nobody was coming forward with the answer. So I doubled down and I kept pressing. I said, look, before we go any further, I do need to, if we're going to invest any money in this, I need to know what it does, why it's there. Can someone please explain to me? And it turned out nobody could explain what it was because it was something that they just did. It was something that was from 10 years previous, where it was a system that was set up that, by the way, nobody ever used anymore. But every time they set up a new agency or they set up a new department, they would install this thing for a large amount of money, and nobody knew what it did. So by asking it and by getting really curious and not being afraid to be the dumbest guy in the room, I actually exposed all of these people, which wasn't the intention, but it was hilarious. So, by the way, we didn't install that system. We saved ourselves quite a bit of money. But you just have to get really, really comfortable doing that. So take a leaf from Leonardo da Vinci. If he's comfortable doing it, we should be able to be comfortable doing it as well. But the other thing is, I really do think we need to be curious about other aspects other than our business. And one of the pieces of research I was looking into when I wrote my first book was around this curiosity factor. And there was a weird fact, this random fact that I've never been able to get out of my head. And I don't know where it was in all the research I was looking at, but it was around the fact that the height of a curb, excuse me, I'm getting over the flu, it's not puberty, the height of a curb in your neighborhood it directly relates to how affluent the neighborhood is. And I'm like, why is this? I have no idea. And to this day, I have no idea why. But I kept researching, I couldn't find an answer to this. But what I noticed is the act of getting curious about something other than what I normally would study, the act of getting curious about this kind of thing made me more curious in general. And I saw this with my son. We went to, I don't know if you guys have heard of Professor Brian Cox. He is a astrophysics professor. So he travels the world. He does these big kind of speeches around the birth of the universe and around how space works and all this cool stuff. So my son and I, this is one of our favorite things to do. We go and listen to lectures like this. And we were sitting there and our mind was just being blown by all this different stuff that he was teaching us around the origin of the universe and how the gases work together, all these different kind of things. And how actually when you're looking out in space, this fascinates me. When you're looking out into space, like you're not actually looking out into space, you're looking out into time, because the amount of time that light takes to travel to you means essentially you're seeing into the past. I mean, boom. So we would go away from this thing and we would be so like our brains would just be fed and we'd be like, oh my goodness, I'm so curious about everything. And you would feed your brain. And then as a correlation, I'm pretty sure our IQ was being fed as well. So I'm a huge fan of just being as curious as possible. But one of the biggest lessons that I've ever learned around this was something I'm not so proud of, but it was something that from my childhood. So I grew up in abuse. I grew up in poverty. I grew up in a not very nice environment. So breaking through that, it was like, when I was dealing with that at home, school was my happy place. It was the place that I would escape to, I would go to, and I would learn. And I'm like, I'm not being bullied here. I'm not afraid. I can put my hand up. I can show off in class and show how intelligent I am. That always made me feel good. But I could just be myself. I could be loud and obnoxious like I am, or I could be, gregarious and running around the room being the high energy person. I wouldn't have to hide. I wouldn't have to kind of keep myself subdued so that I didn't get beaten. So that was a safe space for me until I turned age 11. And in New Zealand here, we have primary school, which is 5 to 10. And then we have what's called intermediate. So it's for 2 years. It's like a transition school. So 11 and 12, intermediate. And then you go off to what we call college. You guys call high school. So this, when I got to age 11, I went to this intermediate. And I discovered something I'd never encountered at school before. And that was a bully. And I had this guy who made my life hell. So all of a sudden, I have no safe space. At home, it was terror. I was afraid, and I was in pain. Then I would go to school, and I would have the same feeling. So for 2 years, this guy made my life hell. And I was like, no, I'm not happy with this. And then we got to age 12. We got to where we were about to go off to college or to high school. And I found out he was going to a different one to me. And I was like, yes, this is the best thing ever. I'm free of my bully. I can have my safe space back. So he went off to one college. I went off to the other one. And that was the point where I determined I wasn't going to be a victim anymore. I was sick of being afraid. I was sick of being beaten all the time. So I was like, I'm going to learn how to defend myself. So I threw myself into martial arts. I threw myself into learning all these different styles. Did boxing, didn't enjoy that. Did boxing for a couple of years and things. But I got relatively good at it. Then at age 17, he got transferred to my school. Now, I was a huge fan of every 80s movie. Right, all those movies where the bully suddenly gets his comeuppance and the underdog finally comes out on top. I'm like, I've seen every John Hughes movie. This is going to be my moment to shine. I'm like, this is going to be great. So he got transferred to the school, and I'm like, yes, I could see how it was going to play out. Right, so I played out exactly as I thought at first. He came past me. I yelled his name and I yelled some expletives. He turned around as he usually did. He kind of waddled over like this, and he took a swing at me, and I'm like, ha ha ha, nope. Then he took another swing, and I'm like, ha ha ha, nope. I just moved out of the way of them, and then finally, bam, I laid him out. Now, I'm not a fan of violence at all, but I did this. I hit him, I laid him out. He was on the ground, out cold. And in my mind, I'm like, this is the moment I've been building up in my mind, except I felt terrible. I didn't feel good at all. And I'm like, I don't know what's going on here. And then I found myself, obviously, in the principal's office, because that's what happened when you fight, by the way. So kids, don't fight. So I'm in the principal's office, and the principal did something I'd never, it really threw me. He turned around and he said, do you know why he got transferred to our school? And I said, I was staunch 17-year-old. I don't care. And he goes, well, I think you should care. And he goes, because he grew up in an abusive household. He said his dad beat him, his sister, and his mum every day since they were toddlers. And the dad beat the mum so badly that in front of both of the two children, that she actually lost her life. So the dad essentially murdered the mum in front of the kids. Now, the dad's gone off to jail, as he should. It's a horrible environment for these kids to grow up in. But they went and lived with an auntie and uncle, and that was closer to our college. So that's why they came and transferred here. And I remember, I don't remember the exact words, but I said something to the principal like, well, I didn't know that. And he goes, no, and I wouldn't expect that you did. He said, but of all the people that I thought might understand him and might have been understand what he was going through and been there for him, you would have been that one person. And that made me realize two things. Number one, I wasn't the hero of my own story here. I was the villain. I was the one guy that had a chance to actually reach out to this guy who was obviously hurting. I had no idea he was hurting. Right? I had a chance to reach out to him, and I didn't. So that impacted me heavily, and that changed my whole outlook going forward. I knew that actually most people are going through pain. Most people are dealing with difficult things. I'm not there to judge them. I'm there to try and be there for them. So I never wanted to be in that situation again. But the other thing that I realized is I had no idea. And I had no idea because I hadn't actually taken the time to try and know. So by being curious about people, by trying to understand people, I will understand their motivations. It's something that's really important to me when I taught my children, was actually try and understand what's behind it. Obviously, when someone comes up and punches you in the face, that's terrible, and you want to cry or you want to punch them back, that's totally understandable. But before you judge that person, try and understand what's going on in their life. Like, why are they acting out in that way? Like, what do they need right now? So that's something that was really important for me and for my children. But interestingly enough, that led me to be so good at marketing, because I suddenly realized when you are so curious about people, you get inside their head. And as entrepreneurs, you should be incredibly curious about your audience, incredibly curious about the people you're trying to target. Because the more you are, the more you get inside their head and you understand how they're thinking, what they like, what are the things that make them hold back, what are the things that make them press forward, what are the questions that they have, all these kind of things. I call it thinkographics. I go beyond demographics and psychographics into thinkographics, like getting in their head. The more you do this, the more you will win, I can guarantee you. Because your clients are going to give you, and I do mean this, they're going to give you every word that you need to be able to market to them. The words that come out of their mouth when they describe their challenge, their problem, the things that they're facing, the questions that they have, all of that information is going to be your marketing material. Like, marketing is really, really easy, because all you do is take their stuff and present it back to them and go, ta-da, it's magic. So, yeah.
One thing I got right now from hearing all of this, sorry, Sonia, I just had to, is it's all about that childlike wonder. Is as adults, we totally lose that. And it is so important as adults that we remember that, and we remember what it's like to be a child, and just to embrace that. And I think as entrepreneurs, it's so important to have that childlike wonder.
Oh, really just childlike in general, Jen. Like, seriously, I used to really, I would kind of hide the fact that I'm a giant nerd, right? I love Star Wars. Like, Star Wars had a profound impact on me when I was 7. That's when it came out. I'm a little old. But I'm also a huge comic book nerd as well. I grew up reading comic books, yeah. But I was a huge fan of that. And I used to kind of hide that from my public persona. It was like, okay, well, you know, people will judge you. Like, comic books, well, you should be reading, you know, non-fiction biographies and all this kind of stuff. That's boring. I want comic books. I want science fiction. I want things that are going to feed my creativity. But then when I realized that actually it is a part of me and it has shaped me for a reason, and it's maybe who I am now, I just went, you know what? There's a point where I don't care anymore. I'm just going to get giddy every time a new Star Wars. In fact, when Force Awakens came out, I've been so, like, there'd been such a dry spell of Star Wars for all of us fans for a long while. I was like so hyped up for that movie that I went there. I went with the family, and my son's sitting next to me. He brought a box of tissues because he's like, "Come on, Dad, you're gonna need this." And I'm like, "Whatever, you're cheeky." And we're sitting there, and I realized I was sitting in the cinema, realizing I'm so excited about this. I actually might be a little too excited. I'm overwhelmed. And then it started, and it comes up with a long time ago in a galaxy far, far away, and you get the dun, 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 and that was it. Floodgates open. I was bawling my eyes out, and I cried through the whole film, not from sadness, but from overwhelm. I was just so in the moment of it. And then there was one point though where I did stop and I looked around and I realized most of our row were crying as well. And I'm like, yes, I'm not alone. I'm not the only geek here. So, but I learned to embrace that, embrace the childlike nature of everything. I mean, being an adult is so damn boring. Like, seriously. Yeah.
And, you know, like, it is, sometimes it's difficult for people, like, to get to that point where they feel comfortable enough to ask the questions, or like just the whole concept of not feeling judged. We live in this world today where there's so much of that around. And if there was like 2 quick little kind of, you know how I put quick in there, Vince.
Yeah. Nice. I feel like you're speaking to me. Yeah.
No, because Jen and I can go on and talk for a long time too. Yeah. We totally get it. But like, for a listener who's listening today that's saying this is all well and great, but I'm not very curious, or they haven't even developed that skill of being curious and what that means for them to grow as a person, what would you share to that?
Okay, one of the biggest things I would do is make it not about you. And by that, because one of the biggest things that hold us back, as we mentioned, is this fear of being judged, this fear of, you know, people noticing that we don't know what we're doing. And by the way, if you're an entrepreneur, I'm just saying it, you don't know what you're doing anyway. Just embrace that. Right. Like, seriously, we've got no idea what the hell we're doing. You're making this up as you go along. And that's exactly what you should be doing as an entrepreneur, because you're creating something that doesn't exist. Like, you're birthing something new into this world. You've never done that before. You've never created this individual little thing that you're doing. So yes, you're outside of your comfort zone. You're making it up. That's all good things. Don't be afraid of that.
Yes.
But one of the things I will say to do is to create what I call an impact list. And this is something I wish I could claim for myself, but it was actually something that somebody else did for me. So they challenged me one day. I was going through, it was one of these moments where I'm like, oh, people wouldn't pay for that, or people wouldn't want to buy that. I was getting ready for my group program, and I'm like, nah, I was going through self-doubt, as we all do. And I was like, people won't want to join this. What if I go out there and only one person signs up? And then I made the mistake of saying I want 20 people in my first intake. And every other entrepreneur's going, dude, this is your first ever group program. Like, aim for 4, man. You're not going to get 20. And I'm like, really? But I thought 20 was a good number. Oh, man. So I doubted myself. But somebody asked me to do something. They said, I want you to write down a list of everybody that you have impacted. So these are all the people that you've helped. Write down their name. If you don't know their name, just write down anonymous user 1. Doesn't really matter. But write down what the challenge they had is and how you impacted them, how you helped them. Right? And when you start this list, you'll come up with like 3 names probably off the top of your head, and then you'll struggle. But come back to it and keep coming back to it. And don't just stick to stuff in business. I put down my neighbor. He's got a sore hip. And it was freezing cold one morning and pouring with rain. I thought, rubbish day. If he takes his wheelie bin down to the road, there's a chance he's going to slip over and hurt himself. So I just went and took it out for him. Didn't even think anything of it. And then he was like, oh my goodness, you have no idea how much that impacted. I'm like, dude, I just took your rubbish out. It's all good. But added him to the impact list. And the reason you do this, the reason you write down this list is that it'll do 2 things. We'll actually do a number of things, right? When you're feeling all of that doubt and all of that fear, right, that means you're looking inward. So it means your eyes are fixated on yourself, and it's going, but if I do this, then I will get exposed. If I do this, then people will judge me. So you're focused very, very inward. The moment you take your eyes off of you and you place it on somebody else out there, when you place it on the people you're trying to impact, what happens is your focus shifts. If you know anything about how the eyes work, you can't focus in 2 places at once. So when your focus is now on them, everything that is inward, all of those fears and all of that stuff, the stuff that's holding us back, all of that becomes in our peripheral vision now, which means we're not focused on it. It's blurry, which means it doesn't have as much impact for us. So fixate on helping other people. The other thing it'll do 2 other things. One of them is on those days that we all have, even if you don't want to admit it, on those days we all have where you wake up and you go, what the hell am I doing? Like, seriously, I should get a real job. I should be an adult. I shouldn't be so childlike. I'm going to fail at business. I can't face the day. And we all have those days. On those days, it's going to help you get out of bed, because you look at that list and you realize, A, I do know what I'm doing. I've impacted a lot of people already. And then it's going to lead you to the other thing, which is, and if I don't turn up, I'm denying other people the impact that I've given all of them. And when you make it not about you and you realize that you're actually in business to impact others, you're in business to help other people with whatever the need is that your product, your offering, your service, and that does. When you realize that, then it's not about you holding back. It's about you actually having to get curious, because otherwise you're denying people something. And I don't want to be that person.
I told people, have that pen ready, because again, you've just blown my mind. And it's
I thought you meant have the pen ready because I talk so fast, Jen.
No, you just got the energy that you have, but also the information. And it is about stepping out of our own comfort zones and taking some of the things from our past that maybe weren't good and stuff like that, and using that to better ourselves, better other people. And that's one of the amazing things of why Sonia and I are doing this. And we're so glad that you came on to talk to us about chasing the insight and being able to talk to us about overcoming obstacles and remembering to be that child that we all at times forget and close up in a box. It is so important when being an entrepreneur, because you're going to hear so many people say, oh my gosh, what are you doing? Why are you investing that money and going out and doing that side gig? Which 9 times out of 10, that side gig during COVID is what kept your family afloat. Let's be real.
It's the biggest thing. I think everyone kind of viewed entrepreneurship as this risky thing that was out there. You know, you do this thing and you may fail, you may succeed. Oh my goodness. But guess what? If you fail, you just do something else. It's all good. But we had this kind of view of entrepreneurship as this scary unknown. But COVID's done one thing. It's made people realize that the supposed safe, secure 9-to-5 job that everyone wants isn't actually secure, and is actually just as risky and as out there as being an entrepreneur. Because, I mean, we saw it. I've seen companies, in fact, really disappointed in some of the larger companies who just went, we need to protect our bottom line. We're in lockdown. Let's lay off a half of our staff or 2/3 of our staff. And you're like, these are people who need you to be there for them, because they're being there for you, building your business, and now you've turned your back on all of them. That's disgusting. So I'll get on my soapbox in a minute.
It's so true, though, what you're saying. Like that when the COVID hit like that, and many people did lose their jobs, they were the ones that were asking questions of what can I do and where can I go? How can I grow? Who am I as a person? What's my worth? All of these questions were coming to their mind, and they were, trying to filter through it all. And one of the things that I have always appreciated about the element of entrepreneurship is the fact that there's always multiple streams. There's always multiple purposes, right? And people are still looking, even today, people are still looking for opportunity in which to grow. They've had an idea. And I want you to address something that I know you have coming up. It is the amazing masterclass that you're offering.
Yes.
Because when Jen and I began to even talk about this, going on YouTube and having coffee chats with everyone, we never knew what it would look like or sound like, just what our own personal goals were. But there are people that, people say to them, oh, you've got some great ideas. Have you ever thought of sharing those with other people? You have been a podcast host and you have interviewed some amazing people. So share with us what you're offering before we wrap up. We'd love that.
Goodness. Okay, so yes, I love podcasting, honestly. And I still remember, as soon as I made the decision, I said, right, that's it. I need to do this. In fact, I was challenged by someone. I was on their podcast, and his is a huge podcast. He turned around at the end of the show and he just went, Vince, when are you pulling your head out of your butt and actually launching a podcast? And I was like, what? Like, how did he know? And he said, because I really want to listen to it. And I was like, finally, I'm going to take the plunge. I'm going to do it. So I did some irreversible action. I posted out on social media and said, in 6 weeks' time, I'm launching a podcast. It's going to be called Chasing the Insights. And this is roughly what it's going to look like. And then I realized I have no idea what the hell I'm doing. So I ran at this thing. But immediately I got pushback from people saying two things. One, podcasting is saturated and dead. Like, everyone has a podcast now, Vince. You're one of the many. You're just jumping on the bandwagon. I'm like, well, no. And also, by the way, they're all wrong. And I'll prove it because my podcast has grown so phenomenally because people love podcasts. But the second thing is people said you can't monetize a podcast. And again, by the way, it's wrong. I've proven it wrong, and we'll cover that off in the masterclass. But essentially, what I want to do is create a way to show people that there are tricks and tips that you do need to understand when launching a podcast. There are some things that you do need to sort of set in place in order to make sure that everything goes well, but it's not hard. And it's really overwhelming. I still remember going, right, okay, now how do I bring a podcast to life? Like, what do I do? I looked down and went, holy crap, I'm completely overwhelmed now. So I did my research and things. So I'm going to teach a masterclass on all the things that you need to consider, that you need to prepare, that you need to do if you want to launch your own podcast. Nice, and it's free.
I love it. Oh my gosh. Sonia.
I know. I really want to encourage, if anybody is watching this and has ever had that moment of curiosity of, what is involved or whatever, take advantage of Vince, the Jedi, and his masterclass, because you will take so much out of it and you will be more prepared to create, to be creative, and to be curious than ever before. So we're just thrilled, Vince, that you've come and hung out with us. And this is probably one of our longest coffee chats that we've had, but that's perfectly fine.
I'm so excited. It is one of our longest, but know what? There was so much takeaway today from it. And
I did warn you both that the moment I start talking, honestly, hanging out with you two is just far too much fun. Like, we could do this for hours.
Yeah, well, we're
coming back. No doubt in my mind, because there is so much more that we're going to talk about in the future. I have a feeling.
Yeah.
So.
But
you won't get me off the show.
Yeah, we do want to thank you from the bottom of our hearts, even being under the weather, for, just sharing with our audience. We're still growing, and we're hoping that, if you've watched this today, that you will hit that like button, that you will subscribe, that you will share our material with other people, because we really just want to be that platform that allows you to come to be unapologetically unique and to grow. And you know what? Maybe even start a podcast. You never know.
Do it.
Anyways, we'll wrap up with that. Thank you again, Vince. We appreciate it so much. And we usually raise our glasses at the end of our show. So cheers to everyone.
Cheers.
And we'll see you next time.
By the way, I won't publicly admit that this is whiskey at this hour of the morning. But anyway, I'm trying to get over a cold. It works. Cheers.
All right, guys. We'll see you on the next show. Have a good one.
Thank you. Bye.